An artist's vision of the Mothman lurking among the moonlit trees outside Point Pleasant, setting the tone for the legend. When the first chill of autumn drifted down the Ohio River Valley, the woods around Point Pleasant seemed to whisper with secrets. Generations of locals grew up listening to tales told on front porches or around flickering campfires, stories that mixed truth and terror in equal measure. Yet none gripped the heart of this Appalachian town quite like the legend of the Mothman, a creature whose crimson eyes glowed in the darkness, whose wings spread wide enough to blot out the moon, and whose presence was said to herald tragedy. It was the late 1960s, a time when America was caught between the hope of space exploration and the anxiety of the Cold War. In Point Pleasant, those anxieties took on feathered wings and an inhuman face. The first sightings were whispered, almost embarrassed, as if sharing a nightmare no one else had. But then the stories grew, multiplying with every uncertain shadow or unexplained shriek from the woods. Before long, the entire town was caught in the web of fear and fascination spun by the Mothman, a legend that would change Point Pleasant forever. Whispers in the woods, the first sightings. The autumn of 1966 had been long and slow, but as the leaves turned to gold and crimson, an undercurrent of unease crept into Point Pleasant. It began with two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Millette, driving near the abandoned TNT area north of town. The moon was pale and cold above them, illuminating derelict concrete domes that once stored explosives during the Second World War. The couples weren't looking for trouble, only a bit of adventure. What they found was something that would haunt their lives and ignite a legend. The first reported Mothman sighting by terrified couples near the shadowy TNT area, forever changing Point Pleasant's history. According to their account, a shape rose from the shadows, a towering figure with broad, leathery wings and eyes that burned with unnatural red light. The creature followed their car, keeping pace at incredible speed, sometimes swooping low enough to scrape the roof. The group raced back to town, breathless and shaken, their voices overlapping in panic as they told the police what they'd seen. It would have been easy to dismiss the story, but the fear in their eyes was real, their hands trembling as they described the monster's uncanny stare. News of the encounter spread like wildfire. Reporters from nearby Charleston arrived to interview the couples. Their testimony was consistent and unwavering. It wasn't long before others began to speak up, hunters, farmers, and even children. Some described seeing the creature perched atop telephone poles or flitting between the trees at dusk. Livestock went missing or were found mutilated in inexplicable ways. Dogs barked into the night, their hackles raised at nothing visible. A pattern emerged. Wherever the Mothman appeared, a strange sense of dread followed. Old-timers nodded grimly, recalling ancient Shawnee legends of a large bird that signaled death. The land around Point Pleasant was steeped in history and blood, from colonial skirmishes to the 1774 Battle of Point Pleasant. Some whispered that the Mothman was a restless spirit or a curse brought on by past wrongs. The town's folklore mingled with the new reports, giving the legend deep roots. Law enforcement received dozens of calls, and patrols were sent to the TNT area. Armed with flashlights and rifles, the men found nothing but broken branches and uneasy silence. The fear, however, wouldn't be so easily dispelled. Teenagers dared each other to drive into the woods at night, only to return pale and shaken. In the bars and diners, conversations turned inevitably to the Mothman. Drawings of the creature began to appear on notice boards. It was said that to see the Mothman was to catch a glimpse of doom itself. Meanwhile, out-of-town journalists and cryptid hunters descended on Point Pleasant, hoping to witness the phenomenon for themselves. They prowled the abandoned bunkers, measuring footprints and setting up cameras. Some caught eerie lights in the distance or heard unexplained screeches echoing across the marshes. But the Mothman, if it was real, remained elusive, appearing only to those who least expected it. Ominous omens. The bridge and the curse. As 1966 bled into 1967, Mothman sightings intensified. Each new report carried with it a growing sense of unease. Farmers found their cattle dead with no apparent cause. Children awoke from nightmares, claiming to see red eyes peering through their windows. Local newspapers ran headlines about the creature, and experts debated whether it was a heron, an escaped exotic bird, or something stranger. But beneath the surface, fear grew, an irrational certainty that the Mothman was not just a curiosity, but a harbinger of calamity. A haunting depiction of the Mothman perched atop the Silver Bridge moments before its tragic collapse, deepening the legend. The Silver Bridge was the pride of Point Pleasant, an elegant span that linked West Virginia to Ohio across the wide, slow-moving Ohio River. Built in 1928, it was a symbol of connection and prosperity for the small town. Yet by December 1967, whispers of structural problems mixed uneasily with stories of the Mothman's latest appearances. Several residents claimed to see the creature perched on the bridge's steel arches, wings folded tight against the icy wind. On December 15, tragedy struck. The Silver Bridge shuddered under the weight of rush-hour traffic, then collapsed with a thunderous roar. Dozens of cars plunged into the freezing water below, 46 people lost their lives. It was a disaster unlike anything Point Pleasant had ever seen. In the aftermath, grief and confusion gave way to a strange certainty. Many townsfolk believed that the Mothman's appearances had been warnings, that its presence was linked to the catastrophe. Stories multiplied in the weeks after the collapse. Survivors recounted seeing red eyes in the fog just before the bridge gave way. Others spoke of mysterious phone calls and men in black suits asking odd questions about the sightings. The legend of the Mothman fused with conspiracy theories, drawing in UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Local authorities struggled to manage both the investigation into the bridge's collapse and the surge of visitors seeking answers. The Silver Bridge disaster became a turning point, cementing the Mothman as more than a mere monster. Some called it an omen, others a guardian force to watch as tragedy unfolded. The creature's motives remained unclear. Was it a bringer of doom, or a desperate attempt to warn the town? Theories abounded, each more fantastical than the last. Yet amid all the speculation, one truth became clear: the legend had changed Point Pleasant. The town grieved, rebuilt, and remembered. Every December, candles were lit in memory of those lost. And always, in the background, the shadow of the Mothman hovered, silent, mysterious, and forever entwined with the fate of Point Pleasant. Echoes through time, the Mothman's enduring legacy. In the years after the Silver Bridge tragedy, Point Pleasant struggled to heal. Families mourned lost loved ones, and the scars of disaster lingered in empty lots and quiet conversations. But amid sorrow, a new story began to take root, one that saw the Mothman not just as a specter of doom, but as a symbol of resilience and mystery that set the town apart. Locals and visitors celebrate at the annual Mothman Festival, honoring both the legend and the resilience of Point Pleasant. Folklorists and paranormal investigators flocked to Point Pleasant. The Mothman became the subject of books, documentaries, and countless newspaper clippings. Local businesses embraced the legend. The town erected a gleaming statue with metallic wings and red, reflective eyes in the heart of Main Street. Each fall, thousands descended on Point Pleasant for the Mothman Festival, a celebration of the unknown, complete with speakers, tours of the old TNT area, costume contests, and live music. What began as a chilling warning transformed into an emblem of community spirit and curiosity. The legend also shaped Point Pleasant's identity in more subtle ways. Children grew up hearing both the warnings and the wonder woven into Mothman tales. Artists painted murals of the winged figure over brick walls. Local storytellers added new flourishes with each retelling. Sometimes the Mothman was a guardian angel in disguise, sometimes a lonely being searching for connection in a world that misunderstood it. The boundaries between fact and fiction blurred as the legend was handed down from one generation to the next. Yet for all its cultural impact, the mystery of the Mothman remained unsolved. Skeptics argued that mass hysteria or misidentifications fueled the sightings. Scientists pointed to the sandhill crane, a large bird with a red patch around its eyes, as a possible explanation. But others insisted that the chilling atmosphere of the TNT area, with its forgotten tunnels and overgrown ruins, held secrets science couldn't explain. Late at night, some swore they still saw glowing eyes in the shadows or heard wings beating against the midnight air. The legend inspired more than just local lore. Authors and filmmakers drew on Point Pleasant's story, weaving the Mothman into American popular culture as an archetype of warning, mystery, and transformation. The creature's image appeared on postcards, t-shirts, and even highway signs. Its presence turned Point Pleasant into a place where past and present coexisted, where every fog-shrouded morning carried the weight of old stories. Through it all, the people of Point Pleasant found meaning in their brush with the unknown. The Mothman became a symbol of what cannot be easily explained, a reminder that even in a world mapped by satellites and smartphones, there are places where legends still walk. The town's spirit endured, shaped by tragedy but uplifted by the wonder of its enduring myth.